Hey there, welcome back to Ask Amy. I have a question this week from Lindsey. Lindsey says, Dear Amy, firstly, your book and other things are helping me enormously and I'm so grateful. My question is about how to deal with the dreadful events that are occurring daily in our world. The truths are now coming out and I don't have to spell out the consequences. I cannot unlearn this daily diet of terrifying facts. They're not coming from my thinking mind, but from the credible and honest scientific experts that I listen to. Thank you for your work and for considering this question. So, such a good question, Lindsey. I'm glad you sent it, and I've spoken to similar versions of this question before, but I think it's so huge on people's minds. So I think it's a really, really great thing to look at. So the last thing I want to do is deny any facts, and the last thing this work or this understanding is ever about is denying or not thinking about, or even worse, let's try to think about it in a nice way. I mean, I only say worse because it doesn't work. It's not bad. Nothing's bad. None of it is bad, but it doesn't work, to try to put a happy spin on things. So I want to point deeper. You're hearing what you're hearing, this daily diet of terrifying facts. When we're on that diet, we're fed a lot of terrifying stuff, or stuff that can be heard and felt as terrifying for sure. But I want you to see the role of your mind in this, because it's not really accurate what you say, that this isn't coming from my thinking mind. It's coming from the credible and honest scientific experts I listen to. I know it really, really looks that way. And yes, you're listening to people that you trust and that seem credible, and they're sharing what looks trustworthy and credible for sure. But everything we take in, all of the sensory information, everything that is ever experienced by a human being comes through the filter of our thinking. It cannot be any other way. We know this because 100 people would hear those exact same 100 credible experts and have 100 wildly different opinions. And in this case, really wildly different, right? We know that's the case. So why that's valuable, again, is not to say, go on the side of the people who aren't freaked out about this, who don't believe it. It's not to try to change your thinking at all. I just want you to see how completely creative and subjective and ever-changing and necessarily biased. I mean, there is no such thing as a true objective thought. It doesn't exist. A thought, by definition, is a creative, subjective thing. So even when you're listening to people who are basing things on science and look credible and all of that stuff, and they're talking facts, even when someone can share a fact with us, whatever that fact is, we aren't hearing a neutral fact. We aren't taking in a neutral fact. And facts are neutral. We know because they don't feel neutral, right? So we know that it's coming through our own thinking. I always think of like a hallway in a sense, where it's like all of this information goes down this hallway and it picks up crap along the way. And the crap it picks up is all of the subjective stuff showing up in our mind. So everything in our experience is colored and muddied and created, as all this information goes through our own thinking, which it always does, always, there's no other way, and then gets spit out as our experience in the moment. So I think it's just super important to see that piece. Now, your mind might be saying that doesn't matter. That's not enough. And it's totally understandable if your mind's saying that. Doesn't matter. This still looks like a fact out there, but it does matter. It speaks to your question. It speaks to the heart of your question. No one knows the truth. No one knows for sure, especially what will happen in the future. Again, by definition, what will happen in the future is a bunch of people's best guesses in this moment based only on what is seen through a bunch of different creative spinny minds in this moment. That goes for whether we're talking about what science can predict or what your grandma predicts. It doesn't matter. It is all the same process. everything is only ever and can only ever be seen through a creative, subjective mind that's cluttered with all kinds of stuff and biases. And that's okay. Like we live in that. That's okay. But in a case like this, where you're understandably really freaked out about the science and the facts and what looks to be very inevitable to you, you really want to see this creative function of the mind, especially when it's talking about something that is not happening right now. So many things can change. So many things can shift. So much can happen that from the thinking we're in, this creative process that's spitting out in this very moment, it cannot account for what isn't. It cannot account for what's not real and what's not happening and what it hasn't seen yet. It cannot do that. So we sit here and now and we spin in this horrible dread and fear and worry about some image that our mind is creating of some future time. And there is so much between here and there. There's no way that can be accurate. There's just no way it can be accurate. By definition, again, this isn't about you or me or what anyone thinks or opinions or facts or science. Just by definition, when we're worried about the future and we're dreading the future, we are making a guess. We're in a very, very highly creative process. And our minds will do that, and we will feel it, and that's okay. We'll feel it as scary, and we'll feel it as likely, and that's all okay. But I just want you to stay on to the fact that this is far more creative than I think you see it to be, because our mind will say, nope, they're scientists, and it's obvious, and it's inevitable, and it's clear, and it's not here. So how can it be? We just can't know that. I feel like what I'm pointing to and what I want you to see in this, Lindsey, is deeper than maybe how it's sounding. So what I'm not saying is, oh, maybe everything will be fine. No, I truly, truly believe maybe everything will be fine. 100%. But again, that's just my personal belief. Doesn't matter. I think maybe everything will be fine because, again, life is this constant moving, unfolding in real time activity. It's an action, an activity, this life thing. And it is constantly picking up new things, and new ideas are born, and new actions are taken, and new insights happen for all of us, for humankind, in real time. So when we sit here now and we talk about some fictional time that doesn't exist yet, all we can do is put how we see things in this limited time right now into that, and then we feel completely hopeless and screwed, of course. But it's not going to work that way. I think a lot about, like, if someone had told us in February of 2020 what was about to happen. Okay, guys, everyone's excited about 2020. In the next few months, everything's going to change. Everything's going to shut down. A ton of people are going to die. A ton of businesses are going to have to shut down. Like, if you had told us that outside of that, everyone would have lost their freaking minds. Everyone would have. We would have freaked out because there's nothing to do in this moment. It's a mind spinning and, imagining and trying to prevent and predict things where we don't really even see anything tangible to prevent or predict. It just would have been a nightmare. Now, as it unfolded in real time, still nightmare a lot of times, right? Still horrible things happened. Horrible things happened for people. And there was this moment-to-moment unfolding where you saw yourself and other people and people around us cope in ways that they could not have known to cope or predicted they would have coped had you told them about it in February. So there's just a giant difference. And again, I don't know what's going to happen, obviously. No, none of us does. But I want you to notice that when you're sitting in dread and fear and this diet of terrifying facts and the consequences are obvious and all of that, your fear and your dread is showing you what's going on. Your mind is creating a future and you fully bought into it. And we do. We all do. But you want to see that that's happening. And that does not deny the science. It does not deny what may or may not happen. But it points you back to what's happening in this very moment. And see, when we have that sense, when we know that, that's where things can happen. Because there are actions that need to be taken here. But it's just like anything, the difference between worry and fear. When we're in legitimate, helpful fear, the action is implicit. When a car is veering toward you or a bear is running at you, you feel a second of fear and then you're acting. Action is implicit in that. When we're sitting around worrying about what if a bear chases me someday or what if a car hits me someday, there's no action to take. So we sit and we spin and we spin and we worry and we feel worse. So that's important, because even here, today, right now, I'm sure there are actions we can take, but we need to see that difference. When you're sitting around paralyzed, as many of us are, understandably, not knowing what to do, but worry, there's just nothing helpful in that. And if anything, all it does is just create more worry and more suffering. But if we can start to see how that's all going on in a slightly different way, there's that little piece where it's like, okay, right now, everything's okay. Now, I know our mind will say, no, because this is happening over there and that's happening over there. But right now, beyond all that, beneath all that, everything's okay. And there's some stuff we can do. There's some actions to take that might occur to you. They're going to occur to you from this space. They're very unlikely to occur to you from this big space of everything's falling apart and it's all inevitable. All that is just straight up paralysis and fear. This is where there's some energy, if there's something to do, if there's something to be seen. So this matters so much that we can keep our heads on straight and see how life just moves moment to moment and not get caught up in the stories, and to see when we are. And again, I hope you can feel what I'm saying here, that it's not to deny anything, but just all the time when we're sitting in just, straight up fear and worry, there's a future picture that is a picture. It's a picture. Now, is there some facts and some stuff to do? Yes. But your worry and dread is about a picture that your mind has made up that is not true in this moment and may or may not be true. We do not know. So we can take some action from understanding that and having a sense of that. So I hope this helps. Thank you so much for sending the question. I'd love to hear what you hear in this, anyone, and we can have some conversation about it. So thanks, Lindsey. And send your questions, any and all of you, about anything at all, to askamy@thelittleschoolofbigchange.com. And I will be back here every Monday speaking to them. Thanks, everyone.